Hello and welcome to the Timberland Investor. Today I wanted to talk about chainsaw gloves. Do they work and should you use them? Now we're going to test to see whether or not they work and how much resistance they have, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that these are probably a waste of money. But first, let's discuss what exactly they are. So there are some chainsaw gloves on the market that are really just branded as gloves that are decent for forest work. They're essentially just branded work gloves. And then there's another type of chainsaw glove, which is what I'm concerned about today, and they actually have protective material in the gloves themselves, similar to a pair of chainsaw chaps or chainsaw boots. So today I have a pair of, I think it's pronounced Vigo, chainsaw gloves, and these are the cheapest ones on Amazon and the first ones that come up in any sort of search query. And they have a single square of ultra heavyweight polyurethane that's supposed to be chainsaw resistant on just the back of the left hand. Not on the right, just on the left hand, and that's important. We'll discuss why later. But it claims that this will stop a chainsaw blade. I am a little skeptical of that, but we'll give it the benefit of the doubt and put it through a realistic test and see how much resistance this thing actually has. So first off, I wanted to show you the fit of the glove. Now, as you can see, that bit of protective fabric is in this square right here, and it gives you a little bit of protection over the knuckles, but none of the fingers, none of the sides, just some like that. So that's kind of the range of protection it gives you. And again, just the left hand. So the right glove has nothing. You can see the difference on those right there. Yeah. So all the protection is just right there, knuckles, none on the fingers. Okay, so without further ado, let's test this, and then let's discuss exactly what these are supposed to do. Okay, so what I have here is I have the glove situated on a log that's sticking out of a pile, and now it does claim that this is going to bring the chainsaw to a stop, similar to a pair of chaps. I don't think that's what we're going to see, but I am going to see how well this can kind of protect you from a realistic scenario. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the chainsaw up to a reasonable speed and have it come in contact with the back of the glove and see how well it resists that contact and whether or not it's going to offer the user any actual protection from that sort of situation. So I know most of you came to this video just to watch this, so without any further ado, let's put it to the test. Alright, let's give it a go. Alright, well that was interesting. It didn't, this material didn't, jam up my saw or anything, but there was a lot of tugging. There was a very strong pull that you would have seen. I mean, this was stuck in here pretty good, this log, and it pulled the glove, and it pulled the wood out of the stack. Now there's this big cut on the glove here. I don't think it actually made it through all the layers, but let's check. So if you can see in there, there's no hole. It did not manage to penetrate all the layers. Alright, so I actually was not really expecting that result, but the question is whether or not this would be considered a success. So, if a cut happens to happen to your leg or to your foot, that's on a very sturdy part of your body. You're not going to be moved with the chainsaw, but what I noticed is there's a very, very strong pull as soon as I hit the glove. Like I could feel it in the saw just try to yank me forward. And what it ended up doing is it yanked the wood out of the pile. Now imagine if this were, an actual scenario where my glove got caught in the saw, a similar thing could happen. So I could have been pulled forward with the top of the chain. Now that said, if I knew I was going to have contact with the back of my hand on the saw, would I prefer to be wearing this than not? Yeah, probably, but that's kind of irrelevant because my question is what exactly these are for. My main contention with these gloves is that the protection is on the back of the left hand. Now, in what situation is the back of my left hand going to come in contact with the chain? See, if I'm using a saw, my left hand is situated on the front bar like this, right next to the chain brake, right? And so if I'm using it, there's no situation unless my hand comes off of that bar where the chain can come in contact. And if by chance my hand ever slipped off, if I had improper grip, right, which that's improper, this is proper, this is improper, and my hand slipped off, I'd hit the chain brake, right? And there's a very slim possibility of any situation where the back of the hand would come in contact. Now, maybe if you're using a chainsaw improperly, you might, reach out to brush away a branch or something as you're cutting. But in that situation, it's your right hand, and you should always engage the chain brake before you take your hands off the saw, right? So that's all great in theory, but these aren't just a marketing gimmick. These are based on real data. So what I'm going to pull up on screen here is a widely cited study from 1994. It is from the U.S. Product Safety Commission, and it's a visualization of the location and frequency of chainsaw injuries. Now, a lot of this is to be expected. The legs and feet are a heavy area of injury, but then you see, interestingly, the left hand. Now, how is that possible? How is the left hand getting injured so often when, as I demonstrated earlier, it's actually pretty hard for that hand to come in contact with the chain? And I thought about it for a while, and really what I think this comes down to is bad data. This is a bit of a hypothesis on my end because I was born in 1994. So if some of you guys who've been around for longer know any differently, please let me know in the comments. But 1994, there were still many chainsaws on the market that did not have a chain brake. And I'm actually not entirely sure when the chain brake came on the market, but certainly if you look at a lot of vintage saws, which I'll throw up an image here of one, they didn't come stock with the chain brake like they did today. If we revisit this scenario and the chain brake is not here, if you were holding your saw and you were cutting, let's say maybe you had a dull saw, you were putting pressure on it, and you had an improper grip, which again, you should always have your thumb underneath the bar here and get a nice solid grip on that. But if you had your thumb over and you had a weak grip, maybe you had loose gloves, right? They're too big for you, and you're putting pressure, your hand slips off and that chain brake isn't there. Yeah, I could absolutely see a situation where your hand comes in contact with that chain. And these might offer good protection from that because your hand's in this position, that plate's oriented right over the chain, and you hit that. I get that. So yeah, while these gloves might be based on a very real problem that used to exist, they're probably not necessary for the modern sawyer because the modern chainsaws have technology that weren't around when the injury statistics were built. So there is one situation where these might be a good idea, and that's if you have a modern electric chainsaw that does not come with a chain brake. Unfortunately, a lot of those, well, I shouldn't say a lot, I actually have no idea. I don't know much about the electric chainsaw market, but I do know that some of them anyway don't come stock with a chain brake. And that's too bad because unfortunately the demographic of people who uses those generally aren't well versed in chainsaw safety. And in my opinion, the chain brake is the #1 safety mechanism on a chainsaw. Now, I'd always recommend that regardless of if you're using a gas saw or an electric chainsaw, you always make sure that your saw has a chain brake on it. But if you are stuck using a saw that does not have a chain brake, yeah, I could definitely see where this could be a valuable piece of equipment. Because if you have a chainsaw with a chain brake and you're taking appropriate precautions and using the chain brake as you should, there really should be a near 0% chance of your hand ever coming in contact with that chain. So instead of wearing these gloves, I recommend following this rule. Before you ever take either hand off the saw, ensure that the chain brake is fully engaged first. If you do that, and you have a chain brake to begin with, these are almost entirely unnecessary, in my opinion. And even if you disagree with that, and you think that these are great and everyone should wear them just because they offer a little bit of protection, I think it is also important to keep in mind that they only offer protection in a very, very limited set of circumstances. Like the stars have to align perfectly for this to help at all. And I'm very big on safety equipment. I actually just got myself a pair of new chaps because I was worried mine were kind of reaching the end of their lifespan. I always wear good chainsaw boots, but there's always a risk with equipment like this that they can offer you a false sense of security. And you can kind of get a little lazy because you think you're protected when really you're not. And so because of that, I think the best rule to follow is just using the chain brake the same way you would the safety of a gun. You only disengage it when you're ready to be cutting. And as soon as you're doing anything else but cutting, you flip that chain brake on, and you should be good. You should never even come close to this situation. So that's all for now, guys. If you agree, disagree, let me know in the comments. And like I said, if any of you have any information, I'm sure a lot of you do, on when exactly chain breaks became widespread, I'd really like to know. I couldn't find that online. If you like this video, then subscribe. There's more content coming your way. Till next time, guys.